I'm Jessica, and this is Live Long and Travel, where we believe traveling brings prosperity and fulfillment. And today, I've got a tip video for you on how to make your road trips fun, safe, and run smoothly. So I've got 10 tips for you. Here we go. Tip number 1 is have some sort of route in mind. It doesn't need to be a step-by-step guide necessarily, but it's really good to have destinations, stopping points, something that some kind of end goal, basically. So whether you are planning by state, by country, by city, whatever works for you, just make sure that you've got your destination set. So for us particularly, I went by state and by city, so we have specific cities that we are hitting, but it's best if you have something. That way you, for one, are not going to miss anything that you want to do in a certain area, and two, you're heading in the right direction, so you are not wasting time and having to reroute and do things. So kind of have something, just a general sort of plan, however small or big is comfortable to you. It's good to have. Tip number 2 is to have a budget. Literally, this is my life motto: have a budget all the time. But especially if you're on a road trip. So whether you're on a 2-week road trip, a weekend road trip, a 4-month road trip like we're about to do, you need to have some sort of budget. Especially for us, we're not gonna be working during our 4-month road trip, so it's especially important for us to have a limit on certain aspects of our spending, right? So you don't wanna keep spending money, because you're gonna be spending money on gas, on food, on snacks, on campsites, on souvenirs if you're a souvenir person. So just make sure you've got a cap limit on that stuff, because otherwise you'll just go nuts. I know I do. Really good thing to have. Everybody should have a budget, just saying. Tip number 3 is apps are your friend. There are so many good apps to use while you're traveling. So Road Trippers, Campendium, iOverlander, Gas Buddy, Happy Cow for us vegans who are in an area and we are desperate for food, gives you ideas, places to eat for the vegans. So there's so many good apps. Put them all on a folder on your phone so they're easily accessible, they're all in the same place, and use them to your advantage. Tip number 4 is be prepared for an emergency, whether that be a medical emergency, a car emergency. Emergencies, you need emergency kits. So for health, get a first aid kit, make a first aid kit. You need to have your bandages, your ointments, your thermometer, your gauze tape, all those things that will cover minor cuts and burns, scratches, stuff like that. Always good to have. You should always have one in your car regardless in case of emergency, but especially on a road trip when you're out, doing the activities, you're hiking, you're swimming, you're doing all this stuff where you could potentially get hurt. Great to have. For the car kit, especially if there's a car breakdown, you got your wrench, your socket set, your screwdrivers, all the little tool stuff you might need for various things. For us especially, we actually borrowed from a family member. It's a jump starter thing, like a box by itself. So if you're stuck in the middle of nowhere, you don't need no help from anybody. You use that thing by yourself and you can jump start your car. Great things to have. You guys should have it. Also, might mention, get a spare tire if you don't have one, and if you do have one, make sure your spare is reliable. Our spare on our van was very old, so we had to have it replaced, but I'm glad we had someone check it out before we left, so in case something did happen with one of our tires, we weren't stuck with a 20-year-old tire on its last leg, Mr. Grandpa Tire. So make sure your spare is in working condition and have your emergency kits always. Tip number 5 is to have snacks on hand at all times. Snacks are the world's treasures. Cherish them. Have healthy snacks, have unhealthy snacks, more healthy snacks than unhealthy snacks, to be honest. Having stuff on hand will keep you from going into convenience stores, into gas stations, and buying junk, like buying your bag of Cheetos. You're like, I'm desperate for Cheetos. Go buy a $4 bag of Cheetos. Guess what? By the end of the trip, you bought $4 bags of Cheetos 3 times a week, and that's very expensive, so in a waste. Have snacks on hand. Keep snacks with you at all times so that when you're feeling munchy, you can just grab in the ice chest. Also keep water. Make sure you're hydrated, especially if you're on road trips. It doesn't matter how long it is, you always need to be hydrated. So keep a bunch of stuff in your ice chest, dry goods, whatever, and keep yourself fed, not on garbage. Tip number 6 is to have something for your protection, you guys. Make sure you've got mace, you've got a hatchet, you've got brass knuckles, you've got taser, something to protect yourself from harm. Always should be on your person or in your vehicle. just have something. Have a couple of things, actually. Just get a couple of things. That way you have a couple different options. So for us, we've got a couple options. We have a noisemaker thing. Just make sure that you're covered in case there is something that you need to be covered for. Tip number 7, spontaneity is great. I know I said you need to have a route, but also make sure you have those spontaneous moments in your trip. If you see a sign, you're driving along, there's a sign, world's biggest cat, world's tastiest cheese ball, world's smallest ant. Make sure you stop. Just stop at the weird ones. When you're looking at a sign, you're like, wow, that's really odd. Go stop. Because the best moments usually come out of spontaneous, not planned things. So be spontaneous, have your organized route that you prefer, but also make sure you do the things that you never thought you would do or that were unplanned originally, because those are. Tip number 8 is to bring some sort of entertainment. You're gonna be in the car for 8, 7, 6 hours. That's long enough for me. Make sure you have stuff to play, right? To play with. Crosswords are great. For us, we are bringing our Nintendo Switch, which is always great to have, and a Game Boy, like one of the original ones, to get some nostalgia playing. Sudokus are great. Make sure you have a playlist full of music, expansive lists of music, podcasts, audiobooks, anything to keep you entertained, because it's gonna be a long time. The kids are gonna get bored. The adults are gonna get bored. Everyone's gonna be bored, everyone's gonna hate it, so make sure you have plenty of things to do, and especially so you don't get too tired, which brings me to my tip number 9 is get plenty of rest if you're on a road trip. Seriously, it's dangerous to drive when you're tired. If you have an SO or a friend or a parent in the front seat or a family member in the front seat driving and they're tired, switch if you're available to. If not, just pull in somewhere and get a nap in the car. No shame. It's better to just sleep in a gas station parking lot or on a truck stop or something than to be driving when you're exhausted. So please keep in mind, please, for everybody else and yourself, get some rest when you need it. Nobody's gonna judge you for it. And my tip number 10, you guys, is look ahead of schedule. I realized this when I was planning our trip. Things are weird because of COVID stuff still. So if you have something on your trip that you must do, or there's something that some activity you want to do, some restaurant you want to go to, look it up. Look on their website. Make sure they're open at the time you're going to be there. Make sure that they don't need reservations. A couple of the things that we wanted to do on our trip, I did not realize needed reservations, or they were booking way in advance, right? So I called a couple places. I'm like, how far in advance do you book? And they were like, oh, like a week or 4 or 5 days or a couple days or whatever. So it's important, especially if you want to do something, to make sure that it's available when you're going to do it, because the worst thing is when you're going up there and you're like, hey, I want to go to this thing. And they're like, you need a reservation. Did you have a reservation? You're like, no. So I encourage you to look ahead of schedule, make sure everything is going according to plan so that you do not waste a whole afternoon or a whole day because you didn't do your research. Okay guys, that's my 10 tips for you to have a successful road trip. Funnily enough, we haven't gone on a road trip yet. It's coming up very fast, but I've done plenty of research to know that these things work and they are all important for your road trip. And if you have any more road trip advice, tips, leave them in the comments below. I'd love that. Educate everybody else, we're all educators together. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you are new, welcome. If you're back, welcome back. Subscribe to our channel. We've got new content coming out pretty regularly once we get started on our trip. Have a couple videos out. We have our van conversion, which is pretty neat for a bunch of amateurs, for a bunch of bozos, if you know what I'm saying. Send the link in the description, and a link in the description to our road trip travel plans in general. We love it for you guys to stick around, and we'll talk to you soon.